Economic Vitality Committee. We are meeting today in the trustees room at the library. The first order of business is approval of minutes, which I distributed, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second, for any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? The next item of business is the election of officers, but before we get to it, I want to welcome Adam Stark, our newest member. Adam, we're delighted to have you here.
Thank you. I don't believe I'm a member, though. I think I'm just hanging on until someone outside this group approves me.
No, you've been officially dumped or whatever they do to you at the select board, so you're official. You're
Who knew?
old ways that. Yep, you're on the payroll. Adam, I don't know, but do you know everybody in the room?
Everyone in the room looks pretty grainy on my screen. Sorry, Mimi, I just realized that may have sounded like a bad pun. But no, I'm not sure if I do.
All right, why don't we start with you?
Greg Higgins, I know.
You know, Adam, okay, Mimi, I know you know Adam. Glenn?
Glenn Bolamaki.
Adam, Chris LaFrance.
Hi, Chris.
We've met, and over here in the corner is Mary Hartman, who's the liaison from the select board. So we're delighted to have you with us.
Paul, I think Paul's online.
Paul, yeah, Paul Rodriguez. Paul, are you with us still?
Yeah,
Paul
I'm,
is-
I'm still here. I'm the liaison from the finance committee.
Well, we're glad to welcome you as well. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the invite.
The next item on the agenda is election of officers. Again, know how best to proceed with that.
But more of a committee, it seems to me.
Yeah, that's what we said last time, as I recall.
We did.
So we'll postpone that until we have a larger group. Okay. So the primary object of our meeting today is to continue the process of goal setting. What I distributed to you is they're not quite official yet, as I understand it, but the select board goals from 25 and 26, you guys are going to adopt these next meeting, Mary? And it's pretty fleshed out though.
Yeah, we added a housing goal and, I think that was good. It's close enough.
Close enough. Okay. So I think what I did, of course, everyone is interested in MCI, and for the record, this morning was a chair's breakfast, and I learned that the consulting group that was working with MCI to develop scenarios has completed their work, and I don't know if it's published yet, but it's online. So if you go to mci-concord.org, you can see the report. It's a pretty substantial report, 100 pages or so.
Comprehensive report, or is that land use?
No, it's not land use. This is
Before we get there.
scenarios for MCI Concord development. So I would encourage everybody to read that. I see we have Tiffany has joined us. Hi, Tiffany. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
I went through the select board goals that they have articulated, and there are a few that stand out as obvious areas where we would have something to sort of contribute to, in addition to MCI. But I think that discussion needs to happen after we've had a chance to review the various scenarios. And thanks too to our, I guess, our congressional delegation for getting some additional funds for MCI. I think $250,000. It hasn't been signed yet, has it? Has it been signed in the budget?
But the governor reserves the right to retract it if federal funds.
Yes, get some federal, but there was $250,000 that was in there for continuing use at MCI, so that's really good. I identified wastewater treatment. I'm sorry, Mark isn't here to, get it on the table and tell us how important this is, but that's clearly there. And then on the second, again, another opportunity for business is F at 2229 Main Street, where the select board has outlined acquisition negotiations. And then the last one that I identified was under 2 financial management revenue goals, C1. Local receipts, support business community to enhance local receipts, forecast schedule, polish, et cetera. You can reproduce out there. Those seem to be directly right up our alley. Mimi had prepared, are you prepared to show it, Mimi?
Sure.
Mimi had kind of delved into that last item with some detail, and so if you could, Mimi, we could get through this.
So I created a little slideshow just to kind of look a little bit so folks understand what local receipts are and to give a sense of like the scale of what we're talking about and which kind of levers we might be able to impact with actions. So basically the question is, what's the financial contribution by commercial enterprises in Concord? In what ways does Concord get revenue from the businesses? We just open here. What are the options that exist to grow that revenue, and recognizing the select board is wanting to focus on that, and that's kind of some key work for this committee to do. So what are local receipts? So Concord gets about 2.6 million from local receipts. So it makes up the kind of big pieces of it are meals tax, room occupancy, so it's hotel, motel, the tax that goes on that. Personal property, so that's like, you know, business tools. You'll notice a big chunk is jet fuel from Hanscom. Building permits, the town manager's office licenses, so that's like liquor licenses, common vic licenses, little bits like that. And business certificates, you'll see that that's such a tiny piece of, doesn't even register as a full percent. But the big bulk of how the town, kind of putting it in context of all of the town's revenues, most of the town's revenues is from property taxes. And you'll see that local receipts, those ones I just went through, only make up 7% of the town's total budget. So even if we were to double it, it's not going to, you know, there's still going to be property taxes on residents. But there is, you know, some wiggle room there. You can see it's a pretty modest amount. If we even just look at property taxes, 79% of it is residential, only 5% of all the property taxes is commercial. So that's really one spot where we can really look at increasing. So the local receipts there, it's still showing up as 7%, and personal property and the commercial property tax. Those are the kind of ones that we can hit on. So the 7, the 1, and the 5%. But you'll recognize that the town is still really dependent on residential property taxes. And then to put some real numbers on what these actually are, meals taxes, we brought in less than $500,000. And that's a 0.75% local option that the town has got some ability to put on it. The state does have a bill pending to be able to allow communities to increase that percentage. And similarly, the town, if that bill passes at the State House, could increase the hotel motel tax. But you can see it's, you know, $1 million out of, you know, 132 million. It's,
And that would take town meeting action.
yeah. And then I believe even after, actually, I don't think you'd need a home rule after that, but it would need town meeting action. Personal property is 826, building permits. It's for all of these, I can go back in time to be able to look at them, with the exception of building permits. Previously, those residential and commercial was bundled together, but the building department is now tracking those separately. And that can be a good way of what we can measure sort of real estate investments that businesses are doing by just tracking the investments that they're making on their properties. And then looking at what are some of the ways that we might be able to move the needle on these individual ones. So we could increase meals taxes if there were more seats in the restaurants to be able to turn those over. If we had more restaurants, if we had other types of food businesses. So for example, if it was a caterer that they don't necessarily have to be on Main Street, they could be catering elsewhere and we could collect those meal taxes. Same way like food trucks. Wherever they sell, the meal tax goes back to where their home base is.
You don't mean taxes, you mean increase the revenue.
We could increase the revenue from that.
Revenue
base.
from that side.
Yeah. Similarly for hotel motel, increase the number of visitors so that they have lower vacancies at the hotels, have another one, have another hotel. Again, like more promotion that we do to generate that. For personal property taxes, that's really dependent on what kind of businesses we've got. If we have ones that have got, you know, significantly high value equipment that they're using, that would increase dramatically.
The cars, where's excise tax?
So the town doesn't separate those out. I wasn't able to, we have excise taxes, which is significant, but most of those are residential or private vehicles, and I wasn't able to differentiate those.
So where do they fall on this?
They're not showing up on these ones. That would be a separate line item. Its own category. Some of these I can get from the state, some I can get from the Treasury office, and some they just kind of bundle it together. As much as possible, I'm trying to do the ones that we can actually see. And then sort of looking at what are some of the tools that we have in our toolbox. This is not necessarily saying which ones the EDC has, but the town as a whole to be able to address and expand on some of those levers. So I know we've already been talking about sewer capacity, roadway vehicle capacity, like that's one of the factors for 2229 Main Street. It's like, it's hard to think about high traffic use there because you just don't have the roadway capacity. Same thing when folks are talking about broadband and cell phone. Zoning is kind of a key one, as we know, like only 3% of the land in Concord is zoned commercial. So that is a factor that's limiting it. And then if we could increase the density on commercial property within that, so that could be greater heights, less open space, less parking, so that more activity can happen on that 3% of land. Some of the other regulatory things that we could look at, and I'm not saying that any of these are the ones that the town wants to do, it's just like, these are the ones that do exist. So folks probably know like Concord, their wetland regulations is actually twice what it is required by statute. The Concord has chosen to make that wider with climate change. That's probably a smart decision, but that is something that could be an option. And then thinking a little bit about programming, things like, you know, the visitor center helps, our promotion around tourism, the Third Thursdays events. We could look at maybe particular industries that we could develop more. So that could be businesses that have got higher value equipment. So that's why I'll let like a lot of places want labs to come in because it's not just your ordinary office space. So I was thinking one of the things that we could maybe we could talk through a couple different things. One is we could kind of look at of these sources of revenue. Do we want to, you know, brainstorm a little bit of like, what are ones that we could move the needle on those? So that's one kind of thing that we could work on. The other one is sort of looking at the tools of that. We've got our toolkit is to assess them of like which ones are feasible and which ones would be higher impact. And we can kind of maybe go through that because I know we're like, okay, we want to increase sewer capacity and what would be the impact from that? We could kind of map this out. And then sort of see if like, okay, which are the ones that we could actually attack? And then based on those insights, then we could think about particular strategies, because kind of going back to this, you know, this is not rocket science, you all know this, but sort of, there's a million things that we could do, some of which might be very hard and have no impact. So we would maybe kind of think through what those might be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. That's
Are you
very-
gonna send that around to us?
I will send it to you. So I haven't, within that,
Well, you may have more work on it, but at some point.
yeah, so there's a bunch of other things that I've got in there. I've got a couple different case studies. Sort of two, just sort of look at a real estate approach. So you could sort of see 768 Elm Street that previously was just one restaurant. Now it's 3 restaurants and retail use. So we could think about that as one model. Then think of like, we have been talking before about beer gardens, and that's more of a programmatic thing that is right now restricted by our zoning code, but that might be very low-cost things to do and the different ways that might have a impact. And then I got a whole bunch of like different tax data comparing Concord to different communities, so folks at their leisure can kind of look at that to dig into the data, because I know folks love the data.
A couple things strike me. One, thank you. We have a bill pending before the legislature to allow for building permit surcharges. And we probably should get that up again, because I suspect, I can't remember what the rules are, Mary, maybe you do, but it's something like if nothing happens for 2 years, you have to go back to town meeting and re-up. I can't remember. So we should probably try to get an update on where that building permit surcharge.
So what's that
Yeah, I'm
mean?
not familiar with this.
What does that mean, surcharge?
Surcharge, so, it was not well fleshed out. There were no, specific rules set up that it excluded. It's if you're gonna build a house over $1 million, right? You have to get a building permit. If it's over $1 million, you'll pay a surcharge. How much? Never got done yet, because you needed enabling legislation from the Commonwealth before you could develop.
Was it exclusively on residential?
Yes, it was residential. If you build a a new addition.
Wow, how did that, I never,
So
how did I miss that?
that happened the same time as the property tax transfer.
24.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
First of all, it never got passed by the legislature, so nothing's happened. But I think we should pick it up again and find out if it's dead. And if it is dead, do we want to resurrect it or not? The other, when you talked about not zoning, but density, that reminds me of the article that was before town meeting a couple of years ago to do with the depot. Where that's what the aim of that was, and I have no idea if the planning department or planning committee plans to get that back up on the table or not. I just don't know, so we should find that out.
There was a lot of opposition there in that
There was a
area.
lot of opposition, and I think talking to folks on the planning committee, I think they would say they didn't handle it as effectively as they thought they could have. Because there was a lot, my recollection is fuzzy, but they came out with a visual that they had adopted that was not so good.
Exactly.
And that just stuck in everybody's mind, and no matter what anybody said, that visual.
We shouldn't have used that as an example.
Yeah.
They kept saying, this is just an example. Everybody's like, yeah. Eggs.
Yeah.
It seems, what I liked about your presentation, and I would hope that we would see it this way, is rather than suggest that the meal tax goes from X to X plus Y, we work to get more revenue by having more things that yield meals tax.
Yeah.
And as a general rule of thumb, I would hope that that's the procedure we'd sort of look at going forward on most of those items that, try to get more uses in areas that are compatible with what we want to see, of course, but that might generate, whether it be research because you get more property tax, but not to raise the property tax percentage, because I think that's a downward spiral for a lot of businesses.
I want to echo that. I want to echo that just a little bit. I think of some of the barrier of entry issues, permits, sewer fees, it's like you want to come to Concord, put down $150,000 so you don't open your doors. We let people open their doors, we can keep on reaping this revenue for a long time.
Right.
So,
I mean,
and if I can also just ask a clarifying question, how much of what I hear here is stuff that is confidential that I shouldn't go home and gab to my wife or talk to our staff about?
This is a public meeting, you can talk about anything you want.
And just to clarify again, I think I'm doing this math right, but so if that 0.75% tax rate on meals is just Concord, we're selling over $60 million in meals already in the town?
So that's, the rest of the tax is going to the state,
Okay. Wow.
but you have to think that that includes country clubs, that includes, you know, the Crosby's Market when it's prepared foods, like any prepared foods at all factor in. So it's not just sit-down restaurants.
Cool. Thank you.
But again, right, while I understand the point you made, we are gonna have that as an opportunity to change the meals tax and.
Well, there's some we might tweak and need to tweak, or whatever.
The bill that's coming from legislature is gonna allow the town to increase the meals tax and,
I get it.
so.
But I mean, I don't want to just say, oh, well, we got more money because we,
No, we don't
Jack
have
the
to
rate.
do anything about it, but it's gonna be there and.
Yeah.
At some
And it may
point, we're gonna have to
work.
figure out what our point of view on that is.
the other thing, if I understand what you said, 3% of the land in Concord is commercial. And they yield 15% of the tax?
If you had all the numbers, yeah.
No, it's 5, 6.
No,
Yeah, but if you look at, the revenues.
no, the revenue is 15%. It was on two different slides. I just wrote it down when 3% of the area is commercial. And one of your slides said 15% of the total revenue.
Yeah, so the local receipts is 7, personal property is 1, and property, tax commercial is 5.
Fine. Yeah, so you put all those receipts together and they're 3% of the land use. Just for somebody who likes open space, that's a pretty good return. If 1/3 of the town is town-owned or state-owned open space, 2/3 isn't, and 3% of the total is commercial. It takes 63% of the remaining part of the town to get the 85%. I mean, it's an incredibly efficient square foot usage of land.
I suspect that's true virtually everywhere about that.
But it's a concept I hadn't even thought about until I saw it here, and it makes a good argument for, hey, we might give a little as a group to get a little more commercial, even though it might take some land, because it's the reward for that land is so significant versus 2-acre zoning, 1-acre zoning, et cetera, et cetera. That's all.
Yeah, if you put a little bit of, going back of like the burden on residents, you know, you could, this is a slide comparing Concord percentage of land to other communities, and you can see we're like among the very lowest. Actually, we are the lowest. And
Lowest in what term?
in terms of the percentage of land zone commercial, this came out as 2.4%. And I'll have to double check on where I got that number. I was getting this from some other communities that have done comparable things. And then when you look at Concord's property tax levy, you were up at around 80%. That's that yellow line across the way, which is comparable to Weston. But then when you look at other places like Lexington, it's down in the 60%. So Concord is super dependent on the property taxes. Yeah, so it is pretty impressive to get that much revenue out of 3% of the land, but.
That's what I'm trying to say.
comparatively,
So 229 and even MCI, you know, it's a good return on your investment to go commercial, it seems.
All right, well, that, Mimi's presentation and that whole issue fits very directly into one of the select board goals. And again, if you remember this slide, this is our area of strategic focus. It also fits again right into the policy and regulation column that we had identified before. So it's going to be, I think, you know, our next, our sort of our overarching goal, are these still the big buckets that we want to play? And then how do the various goals that the select board we've come up with fit in? So for example, I was I won't say I was surprised or disappointed, but I noted that there was nothing in the select board goals that were directly aimed at enhancing the business community. Everything's about getting revenue from it. But our job is economic vitality, trying to enhance the business community in town. And I would have liked to have seen something on the select board goal, something that was aimed at that. So,
Oh, I thought that's what it was.
We did get the letter from the Economic Vitality Committee looking at things like infrastructure, so there are a lot of goals that address wastewater, self-service, transportation. So we did agree.
oh, so that's, I forgot, was from your very first development and land use, see wastewater treatment system capacity, where you're getting applications out, cell towers, stuff like that. So any other comments on, so I think we've got a number of items that we can take from Mimi's presentation and roll right into our policy and regulation. I'd also suggest that we can
Eliminate the far right, can't we?
get rid of Concord 250, although I noted this morning there's a new chair but it's not big parades and stuff like that, it's packing everything, so.
That could be another 250.
Uh,
It'd be another 250.
Be a 251.
well, remember, it just shifts from here in Boston now, the 250 continues, it just moves to Philadelphia. So it gets, but it kind of leaves our bailiwick. So I guess if we look at this, do we have a fourth bucket that we want to talk about? We'll add to our, we're getting rid of 250.
Well, I think I sent you something which might be a fourth bucket. I hadn't thought of it that way. But this is a relatively new committee. When you think of a lot of committees, I mean, there are some younger. And we were fortunate to get 2 warrant articles to town meeting and pass, which I had total confidence it was going to happen. However, wasn't quite sure. I was wondering what the committee thought of expanding our exposure by using other committees. And we're talking everything from Public Works. We had some interaction with planning and a little bit with finance last year, but would it be reasonable if each of us took 1 or 2 committees that we monitor using Zoom, so we don't have to go to the meeting, and brought items that we were interested in to those meetings when they asked for public comment or whatever, and bring back from those viewings what those committees are working on, so that the cultural committee or some housing committees know something like 3% of the land spaces. If you were talking to, say, the natural resource, 3% of our land use gets 15% of our income, and we're working on, so they would understand that if we ask for a little bit of land on something, they would understand why. That might not happen for 10 years, but it would be a relationship that we just did and you wouldn't make every meeting, but I tend to monitor some of the meetings anyways, but what do people think about that for our exposure and to get our word out to a broad group, so that when we go to town meeting or wherever, we're buddies, we're friends, we're at least working towards a common goal of making Concord better, rather than look like a bunch of people that want to run a restaurant and sell hamburgers.
I think I made a similar note to Mike about, I think at the very least you foster communication, sharing ideas, whether those are designated liaisons with every committee or not, but I think anything you can do to open walls. It seems that there's so many committees right in town, they tend to operate in silos a bit. So I think that fostering the kind of connection would be smart.
I think if we had not worked with planning, those 2 articles wouldn't have had a chance. Not a chance. So-
Planning and the select board support and the planning.
They didn't give support, but they didn't come out and throw eggs at us either.
Well,
which,
It wasn't so much the support, although it helped. But we did a lot of refining, if you'll recall, of our warrant article, the parking warrant article.
Because of the,
I think it was exposure to not only the planning committee, but other residents that came and made comments. So I think both of your sets of remarks are very important. I would put them in the category of tactics. Here's what we want to do, and how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit last year. Greg, you were the point guy on our warrant article. So we didn't do so much liaisons, but we said, well, who do we need to talk to? That kind of stuff. So I think once we have developed a set of strategies that we're going to go after, the next step would be, okay, who are the key principal actors for each of these activities that we need to, engage with, get input from, try to build support, stuff like that. So I think both of those are very important. And you're right, Congress, there are lots of committees and, the four select board, I mean, they get assigned to them and they, have to go. We're grateful, Mary, for your presence here. But she probably got seven, so I don't know, but probably got 7 or 8, if I remember, committees to go to, so it could be a real grind. But if we do it as a real tactic to how we're gonna be more successful, getting our message out. And I think not only that, but connecting, to me, it's connecting business vitality to the success of other parts of the town. If they're successful, this is gonna be better off. If the town's better, the cultural community is gonna be better, right?
One of the things at the last meeting, folks talked a little bit about like, what's the role of the committee? And one thing that's stuck out to me was sort of like being advocate, lobbyist, representative. And when I think about like the recreation committee did that whole recreation plan, and there was nothing thinking a little bit about like the economic impact of those recreational facilities. So having a better boat launch could be, a tool for economic. And so there was no kind of, that wasn't even
on the radar.
on the radar at all. So even just being a regular presence would put things on the radar. That the same thing with the ag committee, when you think those are all businesses that have got their own interest group.
Well, they could find out that there's somebody that they can talk to and vice versa, that when you need to talk to one another, you've sort of created that relationship. And you can't do every committee, Jesus.
So if we come back again to this, Greg, I would say that your potential blocks along with Chris's are really a set of tactics. And I don't know how we incorporate it, but I think we would talk about developing tactics as a way to advance our strategic agenda. All right, so how are we going to do that? I mean, that's what you guys are talking about. So I think that's. So how do we map what the select board has done and what we've talked about into this space?
In terms of all the goals, is that what you're talking about?
Well, I guess I'm saying question number one, part of the 3 remaining goals still our strategic focus going forward?
See what the 3 goals are again, especially since.
Communications and marketing, recruiting and retention of businesses, and policy and regulation. And what Mimi talked about in her presentation and included in the select board's financial management revenue goals, that falls under policy and regulations pretty directly. So I would argue that retention and recruitment of businesses to Concord is still
That's gotta be
central to our mission. Communication marketing sort of is related to the tactic question that you talked about, but primarily it was driven by Stephanie's work. Chris, were you working with Stephanie? I forgot. I'm old.
No.
Who worked, Tiffany, who worked with you on business? Somebody started, but then bailed on you, didn't they? On the survey?
On the survey, I think it was someone who resigned. It was somebody who had, oh, it might have been Ross. That's what it was, and then
Yes,
Ross resigned.
James.
Yeah.
So is there a part 2 to the survey? Is there follow-up?
Well, I've reached out to Glenn. I can't see if you're actually on the call because I don't have my glasses on, to see if we could get something through the chamber. So we still can leverage that Chamber of Commerce channel to see if we want to get more pickup in terms of responding to the survey. Mimi has expressed that she felt what we have captured is sufficient. So I'm not quite sure if this would be the best use of our energy at this point, simply because it seems like the profiles that did come forward created enough of a composite that's consistent with what she already has. And then Mimi, I think the only channel we would have besides the Chamber of Commerce would be to do an additional push in the Economic Vitality Committee newsletter, but I know that is usually packed with content, and there's been higher priority content needing to be sent out. So I don't know how you feel about leveraging a second push, or if we feel like this has gotten to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think you had the results from that survey, which I think kind of gel with my business inventory in terms of like the business mix, the customer profile. I think that the next step might be, most of the businesses that come to Concord, they are not startup businesses. They're ones that have already got a location somewhere else in the region. And I think the next step might be looking at who are some of the businesses in the region that might be looking to come to Concord and building those relationships. So the Fiorellas, the Eva's Little Kitchen, Karma. Yeah. So, and that's going to be really like, who are the businesses that Concordians leave town to go to? So that's kind of their market if they came to Concord. I think kind of, and sort of looking at like, okay, which neighborhood would be a good fit for them? Do we have the spaces that meet that need? So if they're going to the casino or whatever, that's not going to be a good fit for Concord. That doesn't have, but maybe there's some other uses that would fit with what our neighborhoods are. I think that might be the next step for us to kind of do matchmaking that way.
And then my question there would be, so I think when we think of the Fiorellas and the Karmas, that would mean we'd have to find existing restaurant vacancies, correct, because of the water issue, or am I misreading that?
So we want to kind of build our bench. So we've got very limited vacancies, which is amazing. We want to be ready that when there is a vacancy, somebody's ready. And because it takes a while for the business to it's a little bit like a marriage, it's like you want to build a relationship and have them fall in love with us. And so that they're kind of ready to transition right away. So it's similar, Jennifer Schuneman buying what's going to be the new New England Guitar Museum. That's because she had like this vision that she was looking for the right space for. We want so that we've got some folks that already have their eye on Concord that we know is a good fit. So when a space does come open, we can kind of like who's on our bench and matchmake that. Because it is such a long lead time. We don't want to have a space sitting long enough for that relationship. So we can maybe think about for the neighborhood, the 2 districts that we've got, which is Concord Center, that's a little bit more touristy, a little more retail oriented, would be one kind of model. So we can think a little bit of like, well, what are some of the gaps in that current mix? What are some of the other appropriate ones? And then sort of look at, okay, who are some of the businesses that fit that? Same thing with the profile for West Concord, and just kind of build those relationships. And
that sounds to me exactly like what is under recruitment and retention of business, the very first bullet.
Yep.
Build and maintain database of good fit potential business for blah, blah, blah. That sounds exactly.
I haven't seen the database. Is that actively maintained and updated?
so I have a business, I look at every property, commercial property, and I once a year go through, is that still accurate? So I'm able to track what the vacancies are, how many new businesses, how many people have moved elsewhere in town. So I do that December of every year.
And then what about prospective tenants?
So I haven't been working on the perspective. It's really been more reactive.
Yeah, okay.
So there have been some that have come forward. There's even just for, like, I've done some outreach for, there's been a long time vacancy over at 9 Acre Corner that I've been proactive on, but haven't gotten very far.
Is that the restaurant?
Yeah, that's been gutted and sitting empty for a long time.
You know, they lost their liquor license. For a long time.
Well, there's still one available. But right now it's just like an empty shell, and
I don't want to make it the next thing on our agenda, but perhaps, maybe at a meeting coming up relatively soon, you could give us an update on that. You know, what are the vacancies, blah, blah, you know, what, you know, where do we exactly stand on as a way for us? And Tiffany, I would ask, is there anything in the survey that you had that would be informative in the sense of, did people indicate things they wish were here, or clientele that they wish would come by? I'm not remembering exactly.
Yeah, I don't know that, I don't know that we got a lot of specificity or thematic, like themes that came through in terms of complementary businesses. I think the goal of the business survey was to better understand how the businesses were thriving or saw opportunities to continue to thrive in Concord, and where they felt there were more obstacles. It was also looking at, you know, the health of their customer base. In terms of understanding what might be a good exercise is to set up opportunities, a survey or otherwise, is to better understand what the residents are looking for in terms of businesses here, and then mapping whatever we collect. For example, I think if we went out and polled residents in Concord, the vast majority of folks would probably think in terms of restaurants, right? And we know that there's a finite amount of restaurants because there's a finite amount of vacancies and water that we can't support that. So I think if we did look at what takes Concord residents outside of Concord to get business or services elsewhere, that might be a helpful exercise, and then map those findings against the data that was surfaced in the business survey. And like a good example there is if we find out that the majority of our residents really want what they would really love is like a chain retail store. Well, then we know that we can't really do that because we have laws around big box retail. So if we find out that they're leaving because they go to Target all the time, or we find out that they're leaving because there's just restaurants that are open later, then we can map that and say, well, that's not really helpful because we have a hard time getting our businesses to stay open later. So I think that would be the audience I would go toward versus asking the existing businesses, well, what else do they want to see here? The other factor there being a lot of our brick and mortar businesses don't live in Concord. So it's sort of two different audiences that we're talking about. And by all means, Mimi or anyone else, correct me if I'm wrong, and kind of thinking about it from that direction.
Also, I think it's something that I hadn't thought about until I saw a few things I was reading about and looking at the goals here is what's the infrastructure cost to the town by each business? It seems like a restaurant, in thinking about restaurants, and then the sewer, said, my God, to have a restaurant is very expensive to the town if you've got to expand the sewer plant. Where's a doctor's office? Where's a whatever down the scale? What is a clothing store? What's its cost to the infrastructure of the police, the fire, the ambulance, all the roads, et cetera, to the town? I don't know whether it's possible, but what does it cost to the town to have a business of each increment? So that you'd focus on ones that maybe were less expensive You know, even though we might want more restaurants to keep working on that, let's not ignore that there might be some low hanging fruit someplace that gives you a lot of revenue per square foot or per investment money. And see if we can't get some of those to come in as well, that don't cost the town any money, any extra real money. I don't know, you know, obviously a convenience store that stays open 24 hours a day probably takes a lot of policemen. You know, and you'd have to, you know, those sorts of thinking that way.
Knowledge about, what businesses generate what revenue?
What do you mean?
If I ask you to say, no, not in aggregate, but if I ask you to list the businesses that generate the most revenue in town.
Like how much, what their gross sales are?
Yeah, what's that?
I wouldn't be able to get that, find, you know, that's their private business data. But sometimes you can get some industry metrics and you can kind of figure it out. So when businesses create a business plan, you know, there's some industry standards of like a gift shop of the square foot and this type of community, you can figure that out.
Because that gets to your point, I think a lot, the other side of it anyway is, you know, what costs us and what do you get? Like a supermarket, I suspect Crosby's or.
You can, I mean, as a proxy, you could use tax revenue, right? You can kind of give you the same general idea of benefit.
Probably that would give you a relatively of revenue.
But it will,
Because it should be, yeah.
well, in terms of like your question is a little bit like, I think what kind of, mostly we're talking about like small retailers in the business districts. I think, you know, what's the revenue and impact of a barber shop or a shoe store versus a gift shop versus a kitchen supply store? We could spend a lot of time figuring out that data. I don't know if it's gonna be.
It wouldn't get so fine that you would go into individual, but I mean,
Classes of business.
classes of,
Services, retail, food.
what's the revenue gonna be out? What do we call in that area on Baker, that the new,
Yeah, they're gonna name.
have we got a name yet? We need a name.
That's what they got.
It used to be called paparazzi, before that was Hojo's. I mean, whatever, we gotta get a name for it. But whatever that area is, I assume the revenue will go up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, that's,
That's a little bit why I was sort of looking at that as a case study, because you've got 3 restaurants, it's meal taxes from all 3. It's a building that's twice as big, so the value of the property is significantly higher.
you have no sewer usage. You have some water usage, of course.
But they pay for that, 100%.
Correct. So there,
Okay.
that might be a really good investment for the town to support stuff like that, and that's all I'm saying. Be
You
able
know,
to
I'd
show that,
suggest-
so that you have the location, you.
I suggest that we may want to look at, you know, I like this idea of looking at things in buckets. You know, certainly retail businesses, customer facing, you know, there's a certain interdependency where like you keep someone in town because that's where the hardware store is. That's also where they're going to buy their groceries, their socks, etc. Right. And so even if one of these businesses puts more of a burden financially or infrastructure on the town, I think it's worth it just in terms of everything else that it keeps in the town. Now you look at the doctor's offices, they're very much standalone. I think there's a much more clear economic calculus there where, you know, it's rare that someone goes to like their pediatrician appointment and then says, oh, I'm also going to engage in some other retail activity.
Interesting. I think you're right.
Yeah, like the beer garden model, kind of that's one to really think about is when you do go to a beer garden, chances are you're also getting a snack. You might be staying overnight. You might go to the gift shop. Like those ones do have like the synergistic thing. That's one of the things about the paparazzi spot. Those aren't local businesses. They're not supporting, you know, any of the sports teams. They're not, all that money's leaving town and people are coming in on Route 2, stopping and going. Where if it's going to any of the businesses here in Conference Center, it's kind of staying more local and it's got this multiplier effect is the big thing that they talk about.
Keep the bucket in that neighborhood.
But that's the rub, right? That those are the centers that it's harder to add more density into, create more space into, you know, so.
That is like the center
But I agree.
of economic vitality is supposed to be
Right.
these business districts.
But to me, it sounds as if under recruiting and retention, that first bucket that we've got there is an important one for us. And so what I guess I'd ask each of you to do is think about how we could unbundle that to more some specific actions, right? Because it seems clear that that generated a lot of conversation, number one, and it seems pretty core to what the heck we're doing for a living. How do we feel about the marketing and communication? Maybe this is stuff that you had spent time on.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, like the Visit Concord website's kind of doing a lot of that in terms of like the customer promoting the town. And I think if we're working on recruitment and retention, that is kind of the part of that is a little bit of like the communication part of it. And I'm doing some projects already between the website with that information. So of our 3 remaining buckets, I feel like that we're kind of hitting on the key role for the EBC about building relationships with the other committees and that kind of advocacy. So in terms of who our audience is for that, I think some of it's already, if it's other businesses, I think I'm hitting that in terms of like, local businesses. If it's the general public, I think Visit Concord's hitting that. If it's with our advocacy hat on in terms of particular policies, that's a missing piece that we still need to do under the under the communications and marketing angle. So a little bit of like, what are the tactics that we need to think about?
So we roll both Chris and Glenn's ideas that we were talking about into that kind of space.
That's what I'm thinking.
The tactics thing that we're talking
Yeah,
about.
in terms of like building relationships with the other committees,
Yeah.
with the other business networks, folks, like that's who we have a big communicating with as well.
Which should broaden it to the overall town, because there's
Yeah.
a lot of people on those committees. So
Okay,
you want to slide that under over
Yeah.
here, is what you're saying. This is tactics, the thing Chris and I talked, just slide that over here and here.
Communications and relationship building.
Yeah.
well, that's what what I would do is go marketing, communication, marketing, and relationships. I would add that, because marketing and communication is this kind of thing.
Mm.
And relationship building is really more interactive and hand-holding and that kind of crap.
Yeah.
So why don't we retitle that? And if we put relationships in there, then it's very easy to put in a bucket down there that talks about relationships with committees and other constituencies in town, right? And that would include partnership, the chamber.
Especially ones I think that don't think about us and we don't think about them very often, cultural people and all those sorts of things.
Well, that's still our big shortcoming, we don't have a good rep. We talked to Stuart, but that doesn't look like that's going anywhere. So we really still need, I think, important for us to have somebody on this committee that represents that community. We have
Is Tom Wilson, is he going to be on? So he would be tied into that to some extent with the tavern.
to some extent, yeah.
To some extent.
Yeah, but I don't
I'm
think.
sure he meets with the museum and stuff like that.
But so I think we've covered the first big one. The second big one we talked about, policy and regulation. That's going to be a continuing activity of ours, but we need to flesh it out. And that goes back to the presentation Mimi made, the 2 remarks I made about, is the planning department going to pick up the depot issue again? I have no idea. And building permit surcharges.
That's all the reason to have somebody monitor the committee and ask them.
Well, I'll take the responsibility for getting a hold of planning and saying, is this gonna be under your radar? If it's not on our radar, we're not gonna push it.
But they were there, was it zoning or was it planning that was gonna get the cell tower thing?
Oh,
No, but those kinds of things that would help, how you doing? Do you need our help? Where are you? That kind of.
who's gonna drive the cell tower? Aren't you guys driving that?
Well, that's staff as far as the cell towers that we've got, but as far as changing the zoning that allows cell towers across a broader section of the town, that's
That's
planning.
planned.
That's planning.
So we've
And when
got-
we were at the meeting, remember they said when Henry presented, they
And
said,
Mary,
we're doing it
you
next
talked
year.
about sewers there, permit increase applications. You guys are gonna do that with Alan or what? Water treatment capacity permit increase applications for both facilities are prepared and submitted.
That's public works.
Public where Alan's gonna do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going
But
back
again,
to-
those are direct places, so for cell towers, for water treatment, that's Public Works. That goes right back to who we should be talking, we should be going advocating. This is really,
Going back to the planning board, the cell towers one, they're working on that mixed use ordinance, which you are you familiar with that, this one? They're now looking at how to make it easier to redevelop sites for mixed use, and right now it's a little too regimented, and it would allow some added flexibility. They're starting on that one. I don't know if they might be wanting to do another bite at the apple on the shared parking ordinance, maybe for this coming year. And they'll be working on the MCI rezoning when they get to that.
when I get to, yeah, but that's still a ways away.
And we had talked about the beer garden ordinance a couple of meetings ago, to advocate for that, which would require a zoning
That's
change.
planning again, right?
That's planning again, yeah.
All right, so cell tower, water treatment, beer garden, and then we'll also put in the bullet, local receipts. I don't know what we're gonna do there, but it's on the select board's infrared, so.
Can I just make a comment about that, Mike?
Sure.
I think when the select board put together their goals, they read your letter and they focused on a lot of the infrastructure that you focused on as enabling economic development.
Right.
The revenue generation that we put as far as local receipts, that was really more under, things for the finance department or the finance staff to focus on. So I wouldn't take that too seriously. What I'm thinking is if you focus on the goals that you've outlined for your committee tonight, the revenue should follow. So I guess I'm giving, the revenue from local receipts is such a small part of our overall revenue. And I know we put it on there, but there's a nuance there that is more focused at the finance staff to get a better handle on that and better handle on forecasting. So focus on your goals. We'll focus on the infrastructure goals that you've.
That's fine. I don't have any, I think though, I would like it on,
Good to see you.
I would like it on it. We can also decide we're not gonna do anything.
Okay.
That's not, but, I mean, it's there. Hi, Tom. How are you? I'm doing the best I can.
Going back to public works, another kind of place for economic vitality, a big impact on economic vitality is the pedestrian accessibility and the quality of the roads within and the kind of infrastructure. So for example, public works is, going to be prioritizing which roads are going to be advanced. There's the work that the TAC committee has done around when Commonwealth Avenue got redeveloped. Unfortunately, they didn't put any new crosswalks. So that really boosts of like, if you don't feel safe crossing the street, you're not gonna, combine going to Deborah's and then go into the clothing stop. So having, again, putting that, being in the room to advance and make that, pushing that priority, I think would be really helpful.
So what's the umbrella? What is it? Public safety?
Yeah, well, that would be under public works.
Public. Well, no, but what's the, I mean, we don't want to put down pedestrian crosswalks.
There would be, transportation infrastructure,
Yeah.
or public space infrastructure. Yeah.
TAC.
Yeah, the TAC.
Yeah.
But within that, there's a whole bunch of, some places call it civic design, so things like, for the Commonwealth Avenue got redeveloped. without one tree, without one bench, the things that actually help make it a place. And so folks weren't thinking in it with that lens. So helping to be that voice would help.
You can kind of lump that in, maybe change some of the words into other bylaws, codes, which impact economic vitality.
So I think we just, you know, we redo that whole column, right? Get these big items listed and then begin the exploration to see if there's things we can support, things we want to initiate. I don't see a lot we can initiate under cell service or, you know, I don't know, you know, but we can certainly be strong advocates and supporters of whatever part of the town does it. Right? All right, so Mimi and I are going to redo this. Okay?
Okay.
And we'll try to incorporate what we heard today into these new buckets, just as a draft. Then we'll come back and we'll talk about it, and get it fleshed out. But I think seeing it as if we knew what we were talking about is actually kind of helpful. So you and I can work on that, okay? Great. Anything else under goals that we want to raise at this time? Okay. Beth is up. Beth isn't here, but she wrote me. Quick update. This week we're launching our ASL tours, which will be offered on our part at 1 p.m. and as a private tour tied to select board goals. Revenues continue to surpass month-to-month goals for all year data that was collected. Partnering with the Convention Bureau to attract visitors coming to the World Cup golf ships in July of 2026. My focus from the draft select board goals will be to support business community and enhance local receipts. So that ties in directly to what we already talked about. Example, booking 2026 literary groups that are staying 3 days and nights, visiting 8 attractions, eating and staying and shopping in Concord. And partnering with Mimi on Third Thursdays and other programs, civility, tolerance, and inclusion. And Third Thursday is tonight, right?
Morning.
Tomorrow, yes. Tomorrow, and Thursday. You'll be able to.
Yeah, Thursday tends to be on Thursday most of the time.
You never know.
It's a good bet.
Mimi, you're up.
So, our Thursday is tomorrow night. That's our second one. The first one, we had over 30 businesses participating. Pretty good, decent attendance, a lot more than normal after 6 o'clock at night. You know, one of the sort of metrics that I'm using is how many people carrying around shopping bags. And we had, you know, a concert that was going on in front of the visitor center. And pretty much all the people that were sitting out there had a shopping bag as they were lounging, which was great. So this month, inspired by the Ag Committee and some stuff that we had done in West Concord, we're doing a little passport. So here we're highlighting on the front, it's our way of kind of key activities. So some of the stuff that's happening tomorrow night, hopefully this will inspire you all. Bourbon tasting at Main Street's Market. They're doing free samples and touch-ups and $100 discounts at Blue Mercury. This thing called Galley Grabs. If you're buy a book at Concord Bookstore, you can pick out basically an advanced copy of a book from one of the publishers. So before it's even printed. The chips and dips tasting at Concord Market, wine tasting. We'll be doing block print making with Art for All. Revolutionary Concord is doing like kids crafts drop-in. The Concord Minutemen and Fife Drama Corps is performing. There's an outdoor play at the Concord Museum. And then we've got the jazz concert outside. And then there's some other like last minute stuff happening. So the business are really kind of getting on board. So with the passport, people will sign or stamp each time they visit the individual businesses because we're trying to get people to roam around. If you collect 4, you drop it off at the visitor center, you get into our drawing. So each month we'll do a gift basket. In December, we're going to do a grand prize. So all the entries from the next couple of months will be added to it. And what's good about this is we're getting everybody's contact information. So we'll be able to vote for them otherwise. And through this, I'll be able to track of like, who are the hot businesses that people are visiting and you know, kind of a little more active.
Until 8 p.m.
Until 8 p.m. Some of the businesses aren't going all the way till 8.
Mhm.
Some of them aren't gonna kick on until September. They sort of feel like until the locals return. But to have 30 signed up, already,
That's
I'm
great.
really happy about.
Have you thought all about enhancing with food trucks at all in these events, or is that cut into local businesses and undermine your
I'm
intent?
trying to not, because the food businesses are doing interesting stuff there. And so it really, I prefer not
Yeah,
to.
I do.
But I understand why. Sort of similar to like the, having the band, to be honest, it's like we want a good band, but not such a good band, that people just want to hang out the whole time. It's like,
Right.
listen, do songs like that, do something else. So that's kind of the angle we're at.
Got it.
My video series, folks might have remembered, I was gonna kick it off this summer, so, we scheduled that for early August. So I'll be, Minuteman, Media is gonna be work with me. We're gonna try to shoot 3 to 4 businesses, do like a 3-minute or so video. They'll be kind of succinct and snappy to profile the ones. The age-friendly toolkit is completed, so we're kind of washing our hands of that one, and it's all out in the world. The ARPA food grants that gave grants to a bunch of the farm stands and to the local businesses, and those are all also wrapping up, but it's been really fun. The farm stands have been sending me photos of their fridges at the farm stands all fleshed out. And what's been really great about that is it not only gives them, it's great money in the pocket of the farm stand that they don't have to pay for this, but it means it's safer food that they're distributing. They're able to expand their offering, so it's not just the vegetables, but they can have, sausages from some other farm. And the stuff that they do have, they can stay fresher longer. So it's got real incentive to that. And then I'm still continuing my email newsletter, which is going really well. I've got 809 people subscribed.
Wow.
And hoping as the third Thursday will help expand that. And it's very big brotherish. I can kind of see what things people are clicking on. And you folks probably see, I always do like that little real estate section on it, where it's like what the open spaces are. It's a way of kind of highlighting different spots. That's like the hot part of the newsletter, which kind of gives me a sense of like people are interested in. One of the metrics for me is like how many Concordians decide to open up businesses in Concord, and we see that like Happy on Main that recently opened. So hoping that that will maybe inspire some of the entrepreneurial spirit in Concord.
Great.
Great, thank you very much, Mary. Public comments. Paul, you're the only public. You want to comment?
Well, I'm in speaking to what you're originally suggesting. I'm acting as a liaison for the finance committee. So I'm trying to take some of the information that you provide here back to the finance committee so we can kind of work on that partnership that you spoke about before. But as a Concord resident, I don't have anything to speak of specifically other than that.
Thank you very much. Do we want to meet in August? August 20th, 4:30?
Works for me. It should be fine.
Sounds like the townhouse may not be fixed by then.
So what?
Sounds like the townhouse may not be fixed by then. It won't. It'll be fixed when it gets cold.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Maybe we hold off spending the money until next May.
You say I already saved $250,000.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm glad we're gonna meet in August, because I think it would be really, really good if we could get this not totally cast in concrete, but in wet cement, right?
That's
It would be really, for those of you, kind of new to this, the cycle of town meeting comes awfully damn fast. And I suspect it's gonna be in April this year. Has it been set?
Yeah.
When is it? End of April. And so it's gonna be a little earlier, so, that means that it's kind of a tight frame. Any other comments or questions? Motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second? All those in favor,
Aye.
right? Thank you all very much for
Thank you.
coming. We'll see you
Thank you.
in August.